Hi everybody, how's it going? Look what I'm going to talk about. The new Marquee Moon from Rhino Hi Fidelity, cut by Kevin Gray. Um, all right. So here's my deal with Marquee Moon. Um, I'm 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 young for this kind of stuff. So I was born in 1976, and I got into this album in approximately the late 90s, in my early 20s. Um, and I wish I could remember what I had. I've been trying to think of this. I almost for sure had this on vinyl in the late '90s, early aughts, and I don't remember much about it. I was less aware of specific pressings back then. Um, Sold it in 2005. I don't remember what I had, but it could have been an original pressing. Could also be that I didn't have it on vinyl and I listened to it on CD. I just can't remember. Um, anyway, I got into that album at the time as an album that I was sort of aware was important. Um, and I liked it at all, especially the first couple songs, Evil and Venus. I remember just not really getting that deeply into it though at the time. And then at sometime in the intervening years, I saw an Elliott Smith interview where he's talking about the title track and how much he loved it, and revisiting that and getting this edition in, I don't remember when I got this exactly, 2017, 2018, around there somewhere, not too long after I got back into records. And this is cut by Chris Bellman. This is during that period when Rhino was doing really uh, good verbiage on their hype stickers. LPs cut from the original analog masters, and I thought this sounded wonderful. Especially the drums. The drum sound is kind of the era, um, very very kind of muffled, very not Bonham esque. It's interesting in the liner notes to the new one. They talk about how the drummer and the engineer spent time getting sounds, and they got a very Bonham-esque sound. And then Verlaine comes in the next day and he's like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! That's not what we're doing here." Um, anyway, I thought this sounded wonderful. I imagined that I would never need another copy of this, and then the high fidelity version came out, and I decided to get it. It's about $50 if you just buy this on its own, including tax and shipping and everything. And why am I paying $50 for a record I already have and I already like? I'm continuing to ask myself that question. Um, I couldn't resist. I just imagined that the Kevin Gray cut would be a little bit better, and from a certain point of view, it is. So I don't regret it. I'm glad to have it. Maybe I'll get rid of this someday, but there's plenty of these out here. This isn't like worth that much or anything, so I might hold on to it for now, and maybe it'll be worth something more someday. So if you're into this and you've poked around in other people's videos and stuff like that, you've probably seen people talking about how much different this is from the original. And so that was sort of why I talked about at the beginning there, what's my relationship with this? How did I get into this? Is I just don't remember. I don't have a specific. I personally, as a younger person who didn't experience this when it first came out, don't am not married to a particular version of this. And so I think that makes it easier for me personally to accept these other versions of it. In Groove Mike has talked about how these take very similar approaches with their mastering, and that this one is just a smidge more revealing, if you will. So like when I look at what Kevin Gray is doing with this, and what he does in general with his mastering, is that basically his equipment is sort of designed to sort of mine these tapes for the maximum amount of information. And he's getting more information out of these tapes than seemingly anybody else. And including the Bernie Grunman crew, who generally do a pretty great job of stuff. And again, I thought this was wonderful. but you can hear just a little bit more on this. There's just a little bit more of a sense of being in the room, just a little bit longer sort of decay time of the tom toms and things like that. So it's kind of everything that Chris Bellman did more or less, except just a little bit more. It's sort of that tape has been mined for just a little bit more sound, just a little bit more detail, and there seem to be sort of two camps. There's a sort of how dare you camp of like, this is not the exact presentation of the original, and it's sacrilege, it's bad. And then there's another camp which is like, the original was flawed. It was regardless of intent or whatever. It actually wasn't that good, and that Chris Bellman and now Kevin Gray even more so have improved upon it. I don't personally have a strong opinion about that because I'm not married to any specific version of it. I did, and this is a flawed way to do it, but it's the best I can, which is I did find some rips on YouTube of original pressings. They're not the highest quality rips in the world. But I gotta, and you know, this compression that YouTube does, so that I get all those caveats and stuff. But what I want to say though is that I personally was not noticing some major difference in the presentation. Honestly, I think what was said was that in the original, Tom Verlaine's guitar just sort of jumps out more, and it does that less so. It more kind of blends in with stuff. Maybe very subtle thing. And so really, that's just, I think that's more of a personal preference thing, I guess. If you're married to that, if you just know and love that version, and now here's this other version, it's not that. I can totally appreciate where that would just be a turnoff. I personally have experienced that with stuff that both versions sound great, but I'd rather hear the way it was originally presented. I've talked about that in the past with other stuff. So I get that. I relate to that. I don't criticize that. I'm not personally experiencing that with this album. And I personally like the Kevin Gray cut. I've been enjoying listening to this album. I've been enjoying hearing it in a way that I've never heard it before. But again, I haven't heard. I don't have access to an exhaustive list of different versions of it. So I guess what I would say is, if you're vaguely similar to me in that you like this album and you feel like, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this, because what I was about to say is, if you feel like you want to have the best possible version, you should get this one. I don't know how you could say any one of these is the best possible version personally, because they just all have their own pluses and minuses. Let me just say one more thing about this whole concept of artist's intent. As someone who played in bands for years and has made many recordings, not all of them have seen the light of day, but some of them have. And I want to say that this whole idea of artist's intent, I have never had an album come out the way that I wanted it to come out. Now, I've never been recording on the level of like being signed to a major label and having the time and money resources that a late 70s major label band would have. Even if Television weren't a major act or anything, they still had access to stuff that I've never had access to. So it could be that when you have access to all that stuff, that you can sort of ascribe everything that comes out of that to being intentional. I personally really doubt it based on my experience, though. This band had done many demo sessions leading up to this, so it wasn't their first time in a studio, but it was their first time doing like a real album with a real producer and spending real amounts of time on it. And I just I honestly can't fathom having a record come out exactly how you want it. So the idea that every single detail of how Marquee Moon came out was in fact exactly as Tom Verlaine for sure is the main dude here. But the idea that everything was exactly as he intended it on that original, for me, that I doubt it. I really doubt it. I don't know. I don't have privileged information. So that's just me on my experiences, kind of guessing about their experiences. So it's easier for me to kind of look at that and say, okay, well that's what they did in 1977, and here's someone else's more or less interpretation of it in 2024, and they're slightly different. I as far as I can tell, based on listening to YouTube videos of the original. Um, so so that's what I would say is if you're worried about those concerns that have been brought up by others, I would my 2 cents is that it's overblown. Those concerns are overblown. I personally think. Um, all right, and this also for the record, I also did get the bumped corner here. Like, um, I thought the packaging actually was fine though. It was a pretty standard mailer. It wasn't bouncing around in there. It just worked out that way. That's just going to happen with records sometimes. I do think it'd be nice if these were in stores rather than having to pay shipping and all that. And I do think it's a little silly that they're limiting to 5,000 copies. So that's my thoughts on that. I missed out on the Cars record, thinking that, like, I like that first Cars record and all, but I don't want to spend $50 on a Cars record. And I decided I did want to spend $50 on a television record that I already had. And the short version is I don't regret it. I think it's an interesting take on it. I'm really enjoying it. It's certainly got the more clarity than any version that I've ever heard before. I can't imagine there's any other version that comes close to the clarity on this. And that offends some people. It's not offending me. So take that for what it's worth, I suppose. Okay, thanks a lot. So long.